you should have the capacity to at least be able to either defend yourself or your family or somebody else. The word defense. When I think of firearms, I think of defense. That's the only reason I advocate firearms, period. In my opinion, I don't want to go on offense with a firearm because that means I'm out of control.
Say that again. You don't want to go on offense with a firearm because that's an indicator that you're out of control. What's happening, y'all? This is Mike D with Black Fathers Now, where we're bringing the village to the brothers. Every couple of weeks, you can look forward to a quick inspirational message or a thought-provoking guest with knowledge and wisdom, all geared towards helping you be the best father that you can be. We're bringing the village to you. Now it's your turn to do something with what you learned. All right, y'all. Let's go. What's going on, fellas? This is your favorite personal development coach, Coach Mike D, Mr. Double Down on You, with another episode of Black Fathers Now. And honestly, today we're going to have a really awesome conversation with an amazing brother. And the brother that I'm talking about is none other than my man, Joseph Huckleby. Now, he goes by, I've called him JoJo for the longest, but initially I'm going to introduce him as Joseph Huckleby, retired detective. But this brother is originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. He's a husband. He's a father. He's a military veteran. Thank you for your service. He's also a retired detective in the city of Knoxville, Tennessee. And I want him to really come in and share his story, his journey. But then also we're going to have a really, open conversation about firearm safety and full transparency. He's my personal firearms instructor. And so I wanted him to come on and share his perspective, as an instructor, he used to train marksmen in the military. And, he's there and he understands it, but he's also a brother. He's also a Black man. He's also a Black father. He's also a Black husband. And I want him to share his perspective and story so that we can get an understanding around firearms. So ladies listening, because y'all tune into what we're talking about, and brothers, I want to welcome you to my man, JoJo Huckleby. What's going on, brother?
Not much, Mike. How are you, man?
Man, I can't complain, man. I take life one moment at a time, man. That's, no faster, no slower. If I try to lump it all together, it gets overwhelming. So yeah, I'm good.
Makes sense.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So before we jump into your journey, man, I like to have the brothers always give shout outs because the reality is, who are we without our support system, right? There's an African proverb that says it takes a whole village to raise a child, but we as adults need a village around us as well. Give a shout out to your village, and then we're going to jump into your story, brother.
Yeah, my shout out goes to all my military brothers and sisters. Law enforcement brothers and sisters and Black around the world.
Military brothers and sisters.
Father's Day just passed by. Yes, absolutely.
I'm sorry. Say that again. I would think we had a little.
I said with especially with Father's Day just passing, and this Father's Day was sort of unique to me.
Why was that?
Well, I just had a more sense of I'm seeing a lot more responsibility as a whole from Black fathers, grabbing a hold to their lives and wanting to be a part of their children's lives, even though they may not be with those children's mother, but they still want to be fathers. And I think that's great.
That is extremely important. Again, obviously in a perfect setup, it's mom and dad in the household and we're doing our thing together, right? We're raising the child together in a household. That's perfect setup. But the reality is life is not always perfect. And so to that point, I think it's an important thing or an important fact for us to be very intentional with regards to how we operate, especially as fathers, as husbands, as men, even if the situations and or the circumstances aren't perfect. So I appreciate you shouting brothers out, because we're recording this, just a couple of days, after Father's Day. So
Right.
appreciate the shout out for that, brother. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So jumping into your story, I mentioned you're originally from Cincinnati. Your husband, your father, you're a military veteran, right? But then you're
Right.
also a retired detective. Talk to us a little bit about your journey, which led you into the military, and also what led you, down the road of actually becoming a detective.
My journey started in 1975. I was 17 years old. And it was at that point in my life I decided to join the military, and definitely wanted to get out of Cincinnati. So that started my journey. While in, I decided to stay upon completion of 20 years and serving as a instructor, drill instructor. Did probably a little bit of everything in the military. I was part of the U.S. Army unit, where we did world competition. We trained different units, marksmanship, stuff like that. And after that journey, I was stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia. And it was at Fort Benning, Georgia, I decided to come to Knoxville, Tennessee, and do law enforcement work, because it's set right in the middle between Cincinnati and Fort Benning, Georgia. So those were my two choices, because those were the areas that I liked.
So that's what brought you to Knoxville, the fact that it basically was in the middle between Fort Benning and Cincinnati.
Right. And Cincinnati was my hometown, which I was not going, but I wanted to be a little closer to family after being separated all these years. And Fort Benning is close to my wife's hometown. So that Knoxville put us right in the middle. So we decided to do Knoxville. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
So with that being said, I did a little patrol work, probably a couple of years or so, joined Knoxville's first gang task force. Shortly after that, I got into investigations and started right out of the chute working homicide. So I worked homicide probably out of my 27 years of service. I probably did a good 22 years working homicide here in the city of Knoxville.
Wow. Okay. 22 years working homicide.
Right.
And then this was also after 20 plus years in the military, correct?
That is correct. Yes, absolutely.
Interesting. And also going forward, you worked homicide, you're detective, and then, you retired not too long ago, and you also were a firearms instructor, correct?
Correct. Absolutely.
Okay. Gotcha. And so talk to me about, I guess, some of the lessons learned. It could be from the job itself. It could be through personal life experience, whatever it may be, that in essence kind of informs your thought process with regard to firearms now, specifically in the Black community.
I look at that twofold. I really look at it twofold. I look at that one as, first of all, education. Okay. And I also look at that as, I do look at it as a necessity. And this is the world that we live in. And I'm not advocating gun violence or nothing like that, but I do advocate education. And I think people should be informed, at least be informed, and entangle yourself into, if you don't do nothing else, into learning what it is about firearms and how to safely use firearms and the different laws and regulations that's with the state. And you want to try to be in compliance of all of that, and not just go out there and just grab a firearm and say, hey, I have a firearm. I'm gonna protect myself. Well, it's a lot more to it than that, you
Mm.
know. Uh,
So even to that point, which is interesting, and again, I mentioned in the intro that you're my personal firearms instructor, and I reached out, and you and I have connected and talked over the years. I mean, actually, full transparency, back in the day, we coached together. Like you had a youth football team, and I actually our
yeah,
first
I remember that.
yeah, it was when I was helping. I was one of the coaches to help you coach youth football. But you mentioned education, and it's interesting. We live in the state of Tennessee, which Tennessee is basically a constitutional carry state, pretty much, where as long as you're over 21, you don't have an active felony, and you don't have a any type of domestic related order of protection against you, you can pretty much conceal and carry just about anywhere in which you're not unlawful, when you can't carry a firearm, right? And so that being said, you mentioned the importance of education. That law says nothing about education. So we have to take it upon ourselves to be educated on firearms, even though the law does not state that you have to be educated on firearms to possess a firearm.
That's true. That's
What
true.
are you, what are your thoughts there? Because again, I'm all about, just understanding, having awareness, but the reality is the law doesn't tell you that you have to be aware and have understanding.
No, the law is pretty vague when it comes to education in regards to firearms, but I look at it as the common sense aspect. Okay, the common sense aspect. Would you go out here and play with a bomb and you have no education about it whatsoever?
Mm-mm.
Most people would get away from it and run. Well, that's the same thing you should do with firearms if you don't know nothing about it. So it's very important that you educate yourself about firearms, learn how to use firearms, what firearms are all about, what can they do, what should you do, and what you shouldn't do. And that keeps not only you safe, but that keeps the people around you safe. Okay. And you need to know how to use a firearm effectively if you're going to deal with firearms. So you got to go get educated and get training on firearms before you venture down that road. And I think that's everybody's opinion, especially in the military and the law enforcement field. Everyone gets training before you pick up a firearm and decide that this is going to be a part of your lifestyle.
And I guess the question to me though, even if it's not going to be a part of your lifestyle, it's kind of like, based off of the country that we live in, and specifically where we live in the country in the South, where you have states that are constitutional carry, and you basically have more people walking around with guns probably than you do without, right? And so guns are basically a part of the ecosystem, so to speak. And that being said, even if you're not a person who wants to conceal and carry, you're not a person who even wants to have one in your house, it still makes sense, in my opinion, to just be educated and understanding, the safety, the danger, but then also the proper use of. It's kind of like cooking, right? Or like knife skills in the kitchen. You might not want to be a chef, but it's probably smart for you to understand safety as it pertains to using a knife. What are your thoughts there?
Absolutely. Firearms don't have to be a part of your life, part of your lifestyle, but just having some common knowledge about it makes you a more versatile person, more aware in regards to firearms, because it is an intricate part of self-defense. And whether it be yourself, whether it be your family, or whatever the case may be, but you have to take that, and it may not be a part of your lifestyle, but you never know when you may have to defend yourself, defend your home, in certain situations arise. And I just think that if you don't educate yourself to at least learning, you don't have to go buy a firearm, but at least be a well-rounded person and say, hey, if I had to do this, okay, then I've got the knowledge to do that. And of course, knowledge is power. But I don't want people to misunderstand and say, okay, everybody should have a gun. Guns are not for everybody, and some people are not capable of using a firearm. And some people that's capable, they don't know whether they can use a firearm in a particular setting or a particular event or not, because you don't know what you're going to do if you face upon a dangerous situation like that. But at least get training and get a common knowledge about firearms. I mean, it's there and it's not going away.
And it's interesting because right now there's a lot of conversation around different types of firearms. Like the AR-15 is the one that there's a lot of conversation around that, or high capacity magazines, or you and I had a conversation about even different types of ammunition and all of that. Kind of give us an understanding, or give us an overall framework of what's actually being discussed there, because sometimes when we look at it from a political or through a political lens, you have one side that thinks all guns are bad and they should be eradicated and they should be taken away. And then you have another side that believes it's a constitutional right for any and everyone to have access to any type of firearm whenever they need it, without any obstruction, without any record or whatever. It's like those are two extreme positions to an extent. Give us an understanding of what's actually being discussed when people start talking about AR-15s and high capacity magazines and all of that, but then also through the lens of us as African Americans, because culturally we see firearms and sometimes we think, and you mentioned you worked on the gang task force and things of that sort, we think like crime in some of our communities, or we think gang violence or something like that. Give us a real overview from your perspective and your experience what we're actually talking about here.
Well, when you talk about the different type of firearms, okay, you talking handgun, rifle, shotgun, AR-15, all of that is still firearms, all of which is dangerous. And the big discussion now, especially in the political world, is whether or not civilians need to have or possess AR-15s, which originally was designed for the military, of course. And it is a powerful rifle, just like any other rifle. It's no different than a 30-06 or something like that. Okay, hunting rifle. Okay, rifles are more powerful than handguns. It's just simple as that. So the conversation is, okay, those weapons were designed for the military. So why do civilians use them? Well, they use them for a lot of reasons. A lot of people use AR-15s for hunting, different things, to sport, period. And a lot of people just like how the AR-15 functions. Okay, so with that being said, they do hold a high capacity magazine, which is 30 round. You can even get 50, 100 round magazine for those particular firearms. Okay, and we're speaking directly about AR-15s. Okay, so and you don't, civilians can't possess a fully automatic AR-15. Again, they're designed for the military. Their first version was a fully automatic. Okay. But they even downsized that to either 3-round burst or a single shot. So with that being said, and my perspective, I've seen mass murder with handguns. I've seen mass murder with knives. I've seen mass murder with AR-15s. And I don't think that we need to single this down to AR-15s and people shouldn't have AR-15s. If you take away everybody's AR-15s, okay, and then you have a mass shooting, well, that's going to be with a handgun. That's going to be with a shotgun or some other type of rifle, okay? And then if you take all the firearms away and then you have mass killings. Well, there's probably people that's going to be bludgeoned to death, people that stabbed to death. Okay, the problem is not firearms, in my opinion. Okay, firearms is part of the problem, but the main problem specifically, personally, is people. It's just simple as that. Because a lot of people in our country and around the world just have a total disregard for life and a lot of hatred toward other races, other people. Just common. It's just very common. Every time you look around at mass shootings here in the United States, and we're speaking of the United States specifically, it's a racist event, more or less. Okay, you have isolated incidents where a person don't care what color you are, and they just want to kill people. Okay, but the majority of our mass shootings have been race directed or related. So, and I just don't think that you can sit back and start switching horses in the middle of the race and say, we'll take away all the AR-15s. Now people are going to use other methods to commit mass murder. So I just don't think taking away a specific weapon is going to make a difference in regards to numbers.
So I got a question. So that being said, you mentioned like high capacity. And so again, I hear the arguments across the board of, if they don't use this, then they'll make bombs, or if they don't do that, then they'll use handguns. If they don't do that, then they'll, throw rocks at somebody or use slingshots or knives and all of that. But I guess the question then comes back to, with a high capacity magazine, with me not having to reload and me having 100 rounds in which I can, in essence, in a split second, unload on a group of individuals, is that, and that goes to the whole notion of the conversation. Because I get what you're saying with regard to, you're taking away a type of weapon. Somebody would just, if they're bent on doing something dangerous, they're going to do something dangerous. But when it comes down to the conversation of the capacity or the ability to do massive damage in a very short amount of time with regard to high capacity, what are your thoughts specifically there? Because that's an interesting, and that's where, again, I get the whole notion of just limiting a type of firearm won't really change a lot. But to me, the conversation with regard to the capacity of the magazines or the ability to, elicit massive casualty immediately, that's a conversation I think that I understand. What are your thoughts there, just on the capacity of the magazines and the capacity of the weapons themselves?
My thought on that is you can take a handgun. Let's take a 9mm handgun, okay? And let's say it's a 17 round magazine capacity, okay? And let's say we have 7 or 8 magazines.
Oh yeah, so basically
you can do just as much damage with that handgun as you can with an AR. It may not be more effective at a further distance, but all of these mass shootings have been close range anyway. Okay, whether it be people walk into a grocery store, whether they walk into a hospital, whether they walk into a church, whether they walk into a school. It's all been at short distances. And you can load a handgun just as fast, reload a handgun just as fast as you can AR or a rifle. So that's why I just don't get it, and I don't understand why people are not really getting down to the source. Okay, if I had to end, we'd probably be much safer in our environment, period, here in the United States. I don't have the answer. I just know that the answer is not just take away one specific weapon, because you can do just as much damage with any other firearm and shoot just as fast and just as harmful based on the type of ammunition that you can put in these firearms.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so with 7 or 8 rounds, 7 or 8 magazines that have critical defense ammunition in it, that's going to do just as much damage as an AR. You know, so I hear it all the time. I see it all the time, and it just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me that we are just targeting a specific weapon. Let's get down to the real source and the complete source of the problem. And it's been like that in our history, throughout the human history. Violence.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just violence. Period. Straight up. Whatever motive is, that's your motive. But it all resorts down to violence. We are violent people.
It's real.
Yeah, we are. Absolutely.
You know, and it's interesting, you know, and I think getting to the root of it, and I'm glad you went there, because I think that's the conversation that we need to really have. You know, we talk about, you know, the United States, and we talk about how the United States was founded. It was not founded on peaceful principles, right? There's an element, there's an element of violence is there. And when we stop and we think about human nature to an extent, you know, there is an element of inherent violence in how we operate, right? And so those are things that we have to learn how to manage inside of us. And so, you know, there's a lot of conversation now with regard to mental health and mental health awareness, because there are a lot of people that are suffering and struggling with, you know, various mental health conditions, which can impact decision making and can also cause you to not have full control of your emotions, right? On the flip side, and this is my personal belief, which is even a bigger issue, is not necessarily individuals suffering from mental illness, but is individuals suffering from the lack of emotional control. We don't know how to manage our emotions. We don't know how to control our anger. We don't know how to temper, you know, our fear. We don't know how to, you know, handle things when we're upset. So therefore we fly off the handle. I'll use an analogy that emotions are good, right? Emotions should ride shotgun in the car with you. We have them for a reason, but you should never let emotions take the wheel, because when you let your emotions take the wheel and you let the emotions drive the car, it's a wild card at play. And a lot of people don't have control of their emotions. And so when you have lack of emotional control and you throw in a firearm, that's a recipe for danger and challenges. And again, you retired as a detective and you worked the gang unit, you worked homicide the majority of your time, you know, in law enforcement. You can probably speak directly to that with regard to the cases that you investigated, correct?
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And I don't know where we start. I don't know where we start to look at people that don't have self-discipline, people that cannot control their emotions, and people, you know, they have such rage inside of them, such violence inside of them. And you know, you be surprised, you'll be shocked of the stuff that on in this world that a lot of people don't get to see behind the scenes. And you take a person like myself, I'm well rounded in this specific subject. However, things that do out here in regards to violence still amazes me. And I just don't see how they can succumb to such violence and do some of the heinous things that they do to other people, and have no self-control whatsoever, and let the best get to them, and then they commit all of these atrocities against other humans. And it's just ridiculous. I mean, yeah, everybody gets mad, but like you said, you know, there's got to be some type of education there, and some type of self-discipline to where, you know, hey, You know, I've got to control myself. And see, when you carry a handgun or a firearm, when you carry one of those, you know, that makes a lot of people, oh, I'm a bigger man now. Okay. And if they run into a situation out in the street because they have that firearm on them, okay, now I'm a more powerful man, as opposed to if they didn't have that firearm and they ran into a situation and got into it with somebody, they would probably walk away from that situation. But now that we have a firearm on us, okay, now it's like we're gonna invite confrontation. Okay.
Mm.
And see, that's what I teach. And that's a big major part of my curriculum when I teach firearms, is just because you have a firearm, that don't make you uh the Billy Bad person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that don't make you the bully.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you need to be aware of that, and you need to treat it as such. Yeah, if you're going to carry it, I want you to carry it, number one, legally, and I want you to have it with you all the time. Okay. But I want you to understand that this does not make you a bigger person. Okay.
Ooh, that's deep. And I think that conversation there is so interesting. And again, we are Black men, and we can speak directly to us and our culture and what's going on within our community specifically. Having a firearm does not make you a bigger person, right?
That is
And
correct.
it
Absolutely.
actually requires you to have more discipline and to have more discernment. And as you and I are talking and having our discussion here, it also makes me think that before firearms training, there needs to be emotional training, because you have, and self-awareness training. Because the thing is, individuals need to understand who they are, right? You have to understand what makes you tick. You need to understand if you are a firecracker, meaning, are you a person that goes from 0 to 100 with the snap of a finger, right? And if so, you need to figure out a way or go through some therapy or do something to get yourself under control from an emotional management perspective before you bring firearms into the mix. Because again, that recipe of lack of emotional control and firearms together mixed up is a recipe for a disaster.
Right. Absolutely. And anger management, uh, uh, that's anger management is a double-edged sword.
Mm.
Okay. And what I mean by that is some people can display a certain amount of anger just to let you know that, hey, I'm not happy with what took place. And then there's some other people, like you said, that don't have any control whatsoever.
Mm.
And at that point, don't have any control. And I've seen people like that that didn't have any control whatsoever of their anger. So it didn't matter whether they had a handgun, whether they had a rifle, whether they had a knife, what have you. It didn't matter what they had, or even their fists.
Mm.
Okay, and reacted accordingly based on their anger, and the ones that don't have good management of their anger end up doing something that they wish they hadn't done.
Mm. Dude, I think this is such a really important conversation. Again, we started off, talking firearms and firearm safety, but I think the real conversation is around, anger management, emotional self-control, self-awareness,
Absolutely,
and
yes.
really understanding who you are, right? And so the thing is, and one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is, you're my personal firearms instructor. And on a personal level, I am not one that is an advocate for people carrying and doing this and doing that. I think everybody is wired differently. There are some that, that should be, and there are some that should not be, right? But
Right.
when it comes to my family, I think about the understanding and awareness, kind of like I think about my kids being water safe, meaning if they're around a pool, I want them to be water safe. The same thing when it comes to firearms. I want my kids to not be fearful of firearms, but I want them to be aware. I'm not going to encourage them that you need to be carrying and you need to be doing this. And I'm not creating, gun enthusiasts. But what I am doing is I want them to be aware and to understand what's going on. Should they be at a friend's house and they see a situation that involves a firearm, they recognize that that's not correct and they need to get up out of there immediately. Right? Because when you and I talked offline, I shared with you numerous times. I can remember being in high school and, people had guns in their backpack, or, in middle school, people bringing guns and showing them off in the bathroom or walking around with in middle school, high school. I have a daughter that's going to middle school now, right? It's like, how do you then respond and react? And then you go to individuals' houses. There are some people who are trained and who understand proper firearm safety and all of that. But then you go to some other people's house and, they might just have a pistol sitting on the counter. You know what I'm saying? And it's just, I want my kids to understand what's right, what's wrong. But then also to have awareness of safety as it pertains to it. Right. And so that's why, I'm going to the lengths to make sure that they have an awareness and a basic understanding of firearm safety actually at a young age.
Right. And that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense to me. What I do advocate is this, and this is just my personal opinion and my personal feeling is, I don't care what color you is. I don't care what color you are. I think that based in the world that we live, it's not your fault. It's not my fault. It's not nobody's fault. It's just the way that this world is. You should have the capacity to at least be able to either defend yourself or your family or somebody else. Mm-hmm. The word defense. When I think of firearms, I think of defense. That's the only reason I advocate firearms, period. In my opinion, I don't want to go on offense with a firearm because that means I'm out of control.
Say that again. You don't want to go on offense with a firearm because that's an indicator that you're out of control.
Completely out of control. Wow. Completely. So, and let's take this for what it's worth. I never liked middle school and elementary school kids having cell phones. I said that's wrong. I didn't do it. You're not old enough to have a cell phone. You don't need a cell phone. Cell phones at that age is nothing but trouble. But based on what's going on in this world, I have changed my mind 100%. Complete turnaround. If I had an elementary school kid and they know how to use, and I will teach them how to use a cell phone. And if I could teach them at kindergarten, first, second, third grade, etc., I would teach them how to use a cell phone just based on the violence that we're having in our schools. And I wonder why, you see an 8-year-old with a cell phone. Mama got this 8-year-old a cell phone for Christmas or for their birthday and stuff like that. Now that all our children need a cell phone, because if one of my children get in trouble out here, and it wouldn't matter, and even if it was your child, you would want to get that call. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? You would want to get that call, and I'm not going to sit back here and Monday morning quarterback different incidents that have taken place all across America, but it's been an asset really for our children to have cell phones in school. Mm-hmm. So I've made a complete turnaround about that. And even when they go to a friend's house, they go to the mall or whatever the case may be. And as a parent, believe me, you want to be the first one to know, because you can't rely on other friends, law enforcement to protect your child. You can't rely on that. You just cannot rely on that. There's too many variables in there, okay? And there's too many mistakes being made, okay? And accountability. I mean, you can delegate authority, but you can't delegate responsibility.
Woo! Okay. That's deep. You can't delegate. You can delegate authority, but you cannot delegate responsibility.
That is correct.
That is, I like that a lot, and that makes a lot of sense. You can delegate authority, but you cannot delegate responsibility. And that's ooh.
You know, and as a parent, and our kids get involved with stuff, and a lot of times our children are just minding their own business. A lot of times they're just minding their own business, and then things take place out there. So I want to get that call. And I have got that call before. Okay. A lot of instances, parents will get there before law enforcement get there. But I want parents that have a cool head to get there and to take care of that situation. And other parents get there to take that into consideration and have a cool head and work together to solve a common problem. I don't want parents going to their children that's been involved in an issue out there in the street. And when both parents get there, now all of a sudden they're in conflict. Okay. So we want parents with cool heads and responsibility to get there and say, hey, we can work this out. We can work this out. Even if it's nothing but, hey, I don't know you and you don't know me. Look, I'm gonna take my child home. You take your child home. You know, let's avoid confrontation. We don't get that, Mike. We and everybody know what I'm talking about. Absolutely. We don't get there. 9 times out of 10, when mama get there from this side and then mama get there from that side, the next thing you know, you got 2 mamas out there tangling. You know, so, and if firearms are involved, there you go.
So
and
you know, I'm listening. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yes.
And now everybody's on an emotional roller coaster, and you don't know where that's going to go. And it's like this, just like a roller coaster. It's like that, you know. So always, and it's the same way that you police. Okay, if you're in uniform, first thing is common sense. Just common sense. That's all it takes to get through most situations. Common sense. Why should I sit there and argue with you and fuss with you about nothing? Get your child or yourself and say, okay, I'm going home. And it's not because I'm afraid of you. It's not because I'm scared of you. It's because I've got common sense and I want to avoid confrontation. It don't make me a bigger man to shoot you or to beat you up, or you to shoot me or to beat me up. That's not a man, period. That's somebody that's completely out of control that wants confrontation. And it's a lot of people, it's sad to say, but it's a lot of people like that. And I think part of it is most of the people in the world, most of them are great people. They're really, really, really good people in this world. And then we have a lot of people that are mentally challenged. Okay. And the people that work in that mentally challenged world, that's their world, that's their thing. And they can understand this probably a lot better than I can. And I think part of the problem is a lot of us have been misdiagnosed. And that's the problem. You know, a lot of people out here are mentally challenged that haven't even been diagnosed, Mike.
Absolutely.
You know, and there's a lot of them that's probably went through some type of testing or something, and they still missed it. So I don't have the answer for that, but I do have the answer for a lot of things, especially when you talk about violence and trauma. It's called common sense. Common sense. Walk away from that.
But so check this out. It's interesting. And again, this podcast is called Black Fathers Now, right? And it's bringing the village to the brothers. And that's the tagline, bringing the village to the brothers. As Black men and as Black fathers, it is incumbent upon us to help to instill that level of confidence and emotional stability in the lives of our children. And so speak to, and again, you spending 27 years as a detective? How many years?
27 in law enforcement.
27 years in law enforcement. The majority of it as a detective, majority of it with the gang task force. How many of the incidents that you encountered involved individuals who had a strong father presence growing up?
It's hard to say. If I put a number on that, I would be lying to you. Because most of those incidents, you don't get to see daddy,
Mhm.
or you don't get to see mama. You don't get to see what's behind the scenes and what's taking place in this child life growing up and stuff like that. You can make an educated guess, okay? But at that particular point, now you're assuming, okay? And our grandmothers and grandfathers are taking care of our children now, especially in the Black community, because we're children at such younger ages. And grandma and granddaddy, they like, well, I just don't think that you're responsible enough to take care of this child. Therefore, I'm going to help you. So in the process of grandma and granddaddy helping you, now you don't switch and put your responsibilities on grandma and granddad. Now they think that they're obligated to take care of your children. But to answer your question, Mike, I just don't know. And very seldom does the father come into the picture when you have an incident involving a young Black person or whatever the case may be. That's, let's say, that's committed a murder. Okay. And most of which, and I can't put a number on it, but most of which a lot of them do come from broken homes where it's just one parent in the house.
So and the thing is, and it's not about disparaging us, because again, we understand challenges, we understand systemic woes, and we understand, things that have been up against, various communities, us specifically throughout history. We understand that. But the reason I was bringing that up is because, again, this is Black fathers now. And, some of us are, blessed to be in the household with our children. Some of us were raised by fathers in our own household. But then we also recognize that there is a challenge in which there are a lot of kids who don't have strong father figures in their lives. And for me, the way that I view it is that, again, it takes a village to raise a child. And as a Black father, if you recognize that there are some young folks within your purview that don't have a strong father figure, they're all ours, right? That's my opinion, meaning we should step out of our way to mentor, to coach, to help with the emotional control of that young person if they do not have a strong father figure in their lives. And again, we can't save everybody, but if everybody who has that mindset does a little bit, we can start to help some of our young folks with that emotional control, understanding what it means to be a man. It's like, yes, we need to defend, protect, and do all of that, but that does not mean that I need to go beat people up. That does not mean I need to go and be a bully. That does not mean because, maybe media is showing me or the culture is showing me that I need to be strapped and I need to make sure I lead with my gun so everybody can see what I got. That, yes, you're seeing that, but let me explain to you why that's the wrong way to operate, right? It's like, it's incumbent upon us. There's a book that I read a while back, and the title of it was "They Stole It, But You Must Return It," right? And it's it's kind of a mind screw when you really think about it, because when somebody steals something, you like, no, they need to return it back. Sometimes that's not going to happen. Nobody is coming to save us at times. So to that point, we have to say, you know what? We understand the state of our community. We understand what's going on. So therefore, as Black men, we got to grab a hold of it and walk in that and lead by example, but then also take some of these young folks under our wing that don't have that and pour into them as well. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more. And you said it, and you said it all, really. So we look at these situations, Mike, you coached football with me, and I appreciate that. You really did. And you were sincere. And I think all coaches were sincere, especially when you're doing youth football. You're doing the 12, 13, 14-year-old kids and stuff like that. And you saw for yourself firsthand, how many fathers did you see at practice? How many fathers did you see at their game? Right, you can count them on one hand. And that right there was a telltale sign of what a lot of our children are going through completely. And now that you mentioned that, while working in the gang task force, I've seen real gang members, and I've dealt with real gang members, and I use that word means in the gang world, to me, that word means dangerous. Okay. I've dealt with dangerous gang members. And so we went through that cycle of taking care of those dangerous gang members. Okay. 10 years down the road, Mike, now we dealing with those dangerous gang members, children. And how I know that, they have the same name as the father. And then when their name come across my desk, I'm like, hold on a minute. That's so-and-so child. Now the child is out here doing
the same stuff,
the same thing that dad was doing. And if it was legal, I would sit here and name names. I could sit here and give you at least 50 names where that incident has actually taken place, like father, like son, right here in Knoxville. And I'm talking about dangerous, very dangerous criminals. And then there's a situation to where daddy commits murder, go to prison. 8, 9, 10 years later, the son commits murder and go to prison. We just saw that this year. Daddy that's serving 20 plus years. Now the son has got a life sentence. So,
but it also speaks to the power of example, right? And how, again, once we know better, we need to do better, right? And so once we understand what's right, what's wrong, we need to operate accordingly. But the other part to it is, if we as fathers aren't operating right, so you're speaking specifically through the lens of, like murders and things of that sort as a former detective, but then let's take it and soften it just a little bit and think about if I'm not treating my wife correctly, or if I'm not taking care of home, or if I'm not doing things in a way that lead to a successful family unit, then the reality is I'm setting the stage, or I'm setting the framework for that habits, or those habits, to be repeated in my kids. And so I think the power of example, kids don't always do what they're told, but there's a strong likelihood that they will either try to repeat what they see and experience.
Right. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that also. And as I look at the single mom, right? And there's a lot of great single moms out here that's doing the best that they can with the help of friends and grandparents. And a lot of single moms are sincere, as long as they put their needs to the side and address the needs of their children. Okay. And a lot of them don't do that, but a lot of them do. Okay. So when you have a child that's not following structure, that there's no help out there, so to speak, for parents involved in those situations. You know what I'm saying? It's like you all for yourself. What do I do with this child? Okay. I chastise this child. I take this child to church. I do this. I do that. I do this. Just even though I'm a single parent, uh, we do have structure within our family. Okay. And then you put mom and dad, and they have structure, great family, great ethics, great values. And then you still have a child that wants to do bad and out here in the street, not doing what they're supposed to do. So where do you get help?
Mm.
And that's a lot of people are looking, they're looking for that answer, because the majority of dads should be listening and talking with people like you, people like me, but they don't. And the bottom line is, very educational for them to be sincere and come and sit down and talk with people and try to get help and understanding about a situation that they're dealing with. But a lot of them, they don't want your help. They don't want my help. They don't want your help. Okay. They want to do this. They want to do this alone, whether it be they're embarrassed by it or whatever the case may be. Okay. So I know, because I've been there.
It's interesting. And I think the whole concept of help, right? And I think the more of us that open up and share our challenges, that share our thought process from the standpoint of, I don't have it all figured out, but I'm okay asking somebody, right? I'm okay getting help. I'm okay employing a coach or an instructor or a counselor or a therapist. And I've had them all, right? Because I know I don't have life figured out. And I realize that nobody's perfect. Perfection is not a requirement for greatness. But to that point, if you are someone who's struggling with raising a child, and maybe the child is starting to dabble in the streets and do different things, seek help, like really seek help. But I guess the biggest thing is, let's start on the front end of creating an infrastructure and an environment where the probability of that being the actions taken by the kid is a little lower, right? So you can't guarantee, like, there's no perfection, right? You can have the perfect household, the perfect situation, the perfect—
That's my point. That's my point.
You can have the perfect situation and a kid can still make the decision to go left, right? There's nothing you can do. But and again, that's just life, because nothing is 100% guaranteed, right? But the reality is, how do we at least put into play the highest likelihood that will not be a choice that the kid makes? Because again, it's all probabilities here, no guarantees, it's probabilities. And so based off of what you've seen from, again, doing the homicide and the gang units and all of that, what are some of the things that parents can do before kids hit that vulnerable age to maybe, detract from or ward off the possibility of going down that path?
That be an intricate part of their life in everything that they do. You have to be there for that child 100%, whether it be school activities, home activities, church. Guard your children, okay? Know who their friends are. Know who they're dealing with, okay? Who they with after school, those type of things. Don't be embarrassed to go get your child, okay? But the only defense, a lot of people say the best defense in the world is a good offense. And now we do need to go on offense when it's involving our children. You got to be in their life 100%. And that lessens your chances of them going to the left. Nothing is 100%, like you said, okay? But that lessens that, okay? Get them involved in education, sports, church. And I think church is an intricate part, of everybody's life, okay? And you need that spirituality, and that helps you maintain, okay? And that helps you have ethics and values and safe regard for your own life and others and stuff like that, because that's what it teaches you, okay? And you learn a lot of life lessons through that. But you have to send our children to school, and we don't know what's going on in school. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
we send our children to spend the night with other children that you don't even know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and you let your children go to the mall, and now the mall is babysitting for them because they're at the mall from the time it opened till the time it closed.
Mm.
Okay, and you see that all you got to do is go to the mall, and when the mall closes, look in front of the mall, look outside. There's probably 30, 40 children, teenagers standing out there waiting for a ride from somebody to get from point A to point B.
Mm.
So my answer to that specific question is all you can do as a parent is just play that intricate part of their life. Be there for them. And I don't care how many times that they're wrong or that they do wrong or whatever. It doesn't even matter. But be there for that child 100%. And that's the only guarantee that you're going to have is that, hey, I'm going to try and I'm not going to give up. And you have to keep on trying and never give up. That's just the bottom line.
Continue to try, never give up, be there for your kids, know their whereabouts, know who their friends are, ask questions, show up, just be an integral part. But then the other side to that is we need to model solid behavior. Because again, they might not always do what they're told, but there's a strong likelihood that they're going to replicate what they see.
Right. Lead by example. Lead by example. Absolutely.
Lead by example. And then when we think about firearms, it's this real conversation of firearms and emotional self-control. We need to find ways to understand how to regulate our emotions, how to handle our emotions. And we also, when it comes to firearms, we need to understand safety. We need to understand the laws. We need to understand right and wrong. And everybody, and this is coming from a detective, we're coming from one who's trained marksman, who's a firearm instructor. Everybody doesn't need a firearm. That's that's the reality of it. I know the law states that if you hit these buckets, you can, but the reality is just because you can does not mean that you should, right? But even if you don't, it still makes sense to be educated because knowledge is power. And so,
absolutely.
So I guess as we kind of bring this thing to a close, do you have any parting words for, the Black men, the Black fathers, from around the world, from your perspective, anything that you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, I look at it like this. Everybody has their opinion about firearms, and the biggest deal now, especially in the state of Tennessee, is you don't have to have a permit for firearm, whether it be on your person or whether it be in your car. Okay. My concept, period. If you are going to carry a firearm, please go get training, and don't just go get anybody's training. Okay. Anybody can teach you to shoot. Okay. But not everybody is going to teach you how to be a mechanical part of that firearm with the education of, hey, just because you got this, that don't make you Billy Badass. And that's just the bottom line. Period. Go get training, proper training that goes farther than marksmanship. Okay, that deals with common sense. Certain situations you're going to get involved in. Well, I got a firearm with me in my car. The police stop me. What do I do? Where do you get that information from? And you should be getting that information from whoever's teaching you about firearms. So try to get that deep, intricate training, and don't just go out there and get training from anybody on just how to shoot. Anybody can teach you how to shoot, okay? But you gotta learn how to maintain yourself with that firearm. So the two pieces work hand in hand.
Ooh, you got to learn how to maintain yourself with that, because the firearm is just a tool, right?
Exactly.
The firearm
That
is
is
just a
correct.
tool.
Absolutely.
So therefore, you need to learn
Absolutely.
how to
Yes, sir.
maintain yourself. And so, whoo, man, retired detective JoJo Huckleby, man, I appreciate you, brother. I think you've really laid out a perspective that's going to help a lot of people with regard to thinking about firearms, thinking about emotional regulation, self-control, mental health, being involved in your kids' life, being present in the kids' lives. But then also, like you mentioned, how you've come full circle on cell phones and all of that, how it's okay to evolve and grow and change your perspective as you get more information and more knowledge. So I appreciate you for sharing with us. And, I guess until next time, man, just continue doing what you're doing. And I'm looking forward. We got to schedule our session, in the,
Right.
in
Absolutely.
the coming
Absolutely.
weeks and whatnot.
Absolutely.
But I appreciate you, brother, man. And thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
No doubt, no doubt. Now, all right, fellas, now as always, make sure to follow Black Fathers Now on all social media outlets. Share this episode out and let me know what you learned from retired detective JoJo Huckleby. The brother brought some information. He brought some knowledge. He brought some wisdom. Now it's all up to you to apply it. And please share this. And until next time, y'all be blessed, well, and wise. And I'll holler at you. Peace. Yo, fellas, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And always, always, always visit blackfathersnow.com, as well as follow Black Fathers Now on virtually every social media platform you can think of. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. Just follow us and engage with us, man. Look forward to hearing from you. And I guess until next time, I'll holler at you. Peace.